Bob.
Karen, it's so good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Here we are again. I love it. And it's going to be a great show today too.
It's going to be, because we have a great guest and you're my co-host. Right? So today's guest is Matt Sakdalan, the visionary founder behind PARE, a golf apparel brand that's blending Filipino heritage, streetwear influences, and bold individuality. As a young entrepreneur, Matt's breaking down barriers in an industry rooted in tradition, building a brand that champions inclusivity, creativity, and fun, both on and off the golf course. Through PARE, young professionals everywhere, how unique ideas and community spirit can fuel new business approaches and set a unique standard for what fashion and leadership look like in today's changing world. Hey, Matt.
Wow, that was incredible. So thank you so much for that intro.
We're going to call all your friends right after the show and read it to them too.
Yeah,
Matt.
I might have to take that from you.
I'll send it over to you. Don't worry.
Matt, it's so great to meet you and see you today. Thanks for being part of the program. I've been curious for days in anticipation of today about the inspiration. What inspired you to fuse elements of Filipino heritage and streetwear and golf fashion all into one thing? And I really want to know, where did the idea come from? What was that spark? And it was like, hey, right? The light bulb over the head moment. I want to hear about that moment as well.
Yeah, no, the aha moment, as I like to call it. Well, one, thank you both so much for having me on the show. It's really great to connect finally, and also too, just, talk about the business. But yeah, PARE, I've had the idea for 10 plus years. You can actually go back to my old notes on my phone, just coming up with the idea. I always knew I wanted to get into the fashion world. I just didn't know what it would be. Growing up, adopting streetwear, sneaker culture, and also too, golf culture as a whole. Like, to me, that was just a part of my life. And I've always wanted to get into it, but my career took a completely different shift. And I guess you fast forward, the more and more I started to really, hey, if I really want to do this, let's go for it. So PARE was my love to pay homage to golf, to streetwear, to sneaker culture, to literally everything that has influenced my life. And really what kind of was a moment of like that light bulb was really the name, right? PARE was just, it was one of those things where it's like, yeah, like, let me see if it sticks. And the more and more I really thought about it, and the more I was like, oh my gosh, there's this like, this totally makes sense. And if I don't do this, like, somebody else is probably going to do it. So PARE, or how Filipinos pronounce it as PARE, it means a term of endearment. It's a way to call your friend, buddy, brother, bro, whatever you want to say it. It's one of those, terms that I've heard my entire life, especially around my dad. My uncles and cousins, they always used to refer to each other as PARE, especially when we're playing on the golf course. If there's a really good shot or someone sank a putt, they're like, oh, nice shot, PARE, right? And so for me, hearing that word has always just, again, it's been a part of my life. But then you start to break down the actual spelling of the word, right? PARE, right? Par also equals E in the game of golf, right? And once that double meaning started to honestly click, I was like, okay, I think I have something here. And, ultimately, again, starting a brand, I always wanted it to be rooted in Filipino culture and, paying homage to, something that I am, right? And, I think for, the current landscape of just fashion brands or just brands in general, there's not a lot when it comes to, marketing to the Filipino audience, and also expressing that into culture. And so for me, taking my passion and love for golf that started at a very young age to then weaving that into my Filipino roots while also taking what I know from streetwear culture and really trying to blend all of that together. So really that's kind of how the idea kind of came up. 2 years, I think I mentioned to you guys earlier on, today is actually my 2nd-year anniversary of launching. I did it strategically in the month of October. Yeah, thank you. I did it strategically in the month of October because it is Filipino American History Month. And so being able to launch during this month, again, celebrating Filipino culture, especially here in America, and, building the brand from there. Again, it was one of those things where the stars started to kind of align. So yeah, I know that's a long-winded answer of, how I
Beautiful.
got to PARE, and building the brand. But yeah, that's what it represents to today.
I love that and how it all seemed to work out in the name and the connection. Tell me about your first time playing golf. Do you remember?
I actually do. So I always say it was between 7 or 8 years old. It was around that time frame. And my dad and one of my cousins and also one of my uncles, they were playing already. I don't know how old they were at the time, but watching them on the golf range was one of those things where maybe this is something I can get into. And then also growing up watching Tiger Woods, to me, he was my Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan is still my Michael Jordan, right? In terms of basketball. But when it came to golf, he was pretty much the same way that, I would view any athlete, right? And so first time picking up a club, it was at a range. I was absolutely horrible, right? I couldn't hit the ball for my life, but the feeling that I will never forget is when one of the balls actually went straight, and the feeling it had on my hands from club to impact. I think any golfer can relate to that. It's a feeling that you can't describe other than, whoa, how do I replicate that? How do I achieve and do that again? And that's what the game is all about. That's what golf is, right? The sport is literally, you are trying to replicate that feeling over and over and over. Sometimes you'll get it, and some days you're not, right? And I think that there's a beauty to that game, right? It's truly battling against yourself. And so, yeah, the first time around, that's what I remember. And I remember being hooked to that feeling, which then got me to a point where my dad really started to, teach me, but also to really pushed me to get lessons, or really pushed me to take my game a little bit further and, expediting a little bit of the timeline. I started playing ever since. Again, it was my sport that I chose to play during high school. I was the only one that truly played out of my entire friend group. Everyone played basketball, soccer. I also played those sports as well, recreationally, but golf was something that, again, I was trying to chase that feeling over and over.
That's
great.
such a gift because, especially in certain communities, right? Golf is not a sport that our parents have played. It's also a very expensive sport, right? To learn as well. And so the fact that you were exposed to it so early was a great gift by your dad, by your family members, and just introduced you into that culture from such a young age.
Yeah, I mean, you're spot on. It really, to this day, it's been such a gift, right? It's been a huge blessing because not many, at that time, it was very rare, right? If you want to call it what it is, right? It was predominantly a white male sport, right? People like me, outside of Tiger Woods, right? And I think there was such a love for that. To see someone of color, you relate to that, as a person of color. And so, yeah, growing up, I think I was truly like the only Asian that was playing within the neighborhood, right? And so for me to be able to adopt something at such a young age, it's carried so many just different things just beyond the sport in terms of like life lessons, in terms of things that I learn about myself, things that I learn about people, being able to gain different perspectives. We can go into that. I could speak hours about that, right? But yeah, at such a young age, it truly was a blessing to be able to be a part of a sport that, even till this day isn't as welcoming, right? And I think that's part of my focus is, how do I make it more welcoming? How do I make it more inviting to people, like me and like others?
So when launching PARE, what were some of the things you did, or what were some of the steps that you've taken to make sure that your brand is inclusive? And do you have any advice for young entrepreneurs that want to launch with an idea to ensure that their business is inclusive as well?
Yeah, it's such a great question. I think being rooted in being Filipino, right? I think that already in itself is inclusive, right? I think we pride ourselves as Filipinos that we are very welcoming and we're very open to bringing people in. Once we get to know somebody, right, whether you're Filipino or not, we treat you like family, right? And we're going to treat you like you're our best friend. And a lot of that stems from how I grew up, right? That's how my family raised us. And, you know, to me, I think the inclusiveness was kind of already there. I think just me being able to like, hey, like, if I'm going to do this, like, it needs to be welcoming. It needs to be something warm. It can't feel like, you know, the clubhouse mentality where it's private, only a certain group of people can get in, right? I think I was trying to completely go away from that. And so, yeah, in terms of just like launching the brand, that honestly was like a number one priority. It was like, I don't care if you're Filipino or not. If you see something in this and you feel like you relate to it and to a degree, my mission is already accomplished, right? I want people to feel like, hey, like this is more than just a brand. This is more than just, pieces of accessories or clothing. I want it to make people feel like they are a part of something. And part of the inclusiveness that I try to do with the brand is, it's all about the community. Prior to launching, I was in a role that was so focused on building community. Luckily, that was a passion of mine. That role was to bring sneakerheads alike into a community and to be able to now take what I've learned from that and put it into the brand that I'm building to this day. The community is just like, it's like the number one aspect.
Hey, Matt, what have been some of the greatest challenges in launching and managing PARE, and what are some of the greatest rewards so far for you over the last 2 years?
That's a loaded question. I'll start off by honestly just taking the first initial step to putting something out there. I overcame my biggest fear, right? I think for years, again, I mentioned how I've had an idea or multiple ideas in my head and jotting them down and not truly activating on them. Getting over the fear of how are people going to react? How are people going to take this, right? There were so many just thoughts that would just consume me to a point where it's like, nope, I'm not going to launch, right? So to me, being able to overcome that fear was a massive step for me. That may seem like very minuscule to others, right, that have started businesses and are very successful, right? But for me, that was like a huge thing to overcome. Part of that too, right? Don't have to talk about it too much, but the finances, right? I took a huge risk with my wife to be able to finance building the brand. It took a lot of capital, right? And to this day, I'm still pouring into the business. Luckily I've made the money back, but it still goes back into the business, right? And I think that's going to be a constant thing that I'm going to have to get used to. And taking that risk too was just another added layer of just like, oh my God, am I going to make my investment back? Am I going to lose money? Ultimately, right, when you're starting a business, when you're getting into this field, especially within fashion, and also to the game of golf, like it's so competitive and it's also niche at the same time. So you really have no idea whether or not it's going to be a flop or it's going to be a success. And, by the grace of God, luckily I've been doing okay, right? But yeah, there's a ton of risks. But to talk about the rewards, my gosh, again, it stems back to building the community. I have met and made so many different connections starting this business. It's been so rewarding in that sense. It's been super humbling. It's one of those things where I've met people that I've always wanted to meet. And now I am very good friends with those people. And it's truly just kind of like, I reflect back, especially, today being my 2nd year anniversary. I'm like, wow, like how was I able to do that? Right. And I think the more and more I try to put more positive affirmations or just put positive vibes up in the air and just kind of be like, no, I'm going to manifest this. I'm going to be able to do this. And yeah, it's been pretty cool to kind of see, me putting in the work while also to just seeing the reward of like, hey, like it's really cool that there are people that actually care about this brand. For me too, it's like it's never been really about like, oh my God, can I make a fortune out of this? It's more like, no, I'm all about just making the connections. And if I can find people, whether they're Filipino or not, that resonate with the brand and they continue to support it, yeah, that's all I could ask for.
When I listen to you and I look at what you've created, it's so unique in the fact that not only is it about your culture, Filipino culture, not only is it about golf, but you've brought in the streetwear elements. And you talked about accessibility and inclusivity. And, in a sport that is really traditional, even to this day, bringing in those elements actually just creates a whole nother, I don't know what the right word is, but genre of gear for that. So it's kind of breaking down some of those barriers that may also turn people away, right? Because that's not necessarily their style, or they feel like they need to conform to fit in on the golf course, in the golf club. And so slowly you're changing mindsets by saying, hey, you can still play golf, but you can look different. You can dress in the style that you want. It actually doesn't change your game. And so if clothing is part of our personalities and we want to express ourselves, right? You're helping them do that by infusing those different elements, which I think is really unique. And I just wanted to hear a little bit more about how you wanted to fold in the streetwear aspect of it, because that to me just pops on a whole nother level as well as your culture.
Yeah, no, I love everything that you mentioned there because it's so spot on in terms of what I'm really trying to do, right? It's you can play this game and find your own type of like unique expression through how you dress. Don't get me wrong, right? When I first fell in love with golf, there was a specific attire that you had to abide to, right? That's just how it was in the old society, right? But for me, growing up at a very young age, I was obsessed with different pieces of clothing that made me feel comfortable and made me feel like, oh, like I'm expressing my own way of like how I want to be presenting myself, right? I grew up in an era where watching MTV, BET, especially some of my favorite artists and the way that they dressed, I was like, that's really cool. And I want to get into that, right? And so at a very young age, I started off by just being obsessed with like different looks. I think I was honestly one of the first kids in my grade that brought new era fitteds, like the flat brim hats. Everybody else was wearing, let's call it the dad hat, right? Where it's a curved bill. And that's what the game of golf is all about, right? It's like that look. And I'll never forget when I first wore it was a Yankees fitted and everyone was like, what in the heck is Matt wearing? But that's what I felt comfortable in, right? And to this day, I always just try to, not follow trends or not follow what's like the latest and greatest, but it's more so like, no, like I'm going to wear what I feel comfortable in. And ultimately, right, like building the brand, that's what it's all about. It's not meant to disrupt in a negative way. It's more like, no, you can wear this on the golf course or off the golf course. And I think it's not just me. There's a lot of brands out there that are disrupting in such a unique and awesome way that golf fashion has now it's starting to make turns in terms of like, yeah, you can wear a t-shirt, but you can dress it up with, some nice slacks, right? You don't have to wear a polo tucked in. You can wear, a flat brim hat. Like, it doesn't have to be curved. Again, like, for me, taking what was at a very young age, what I was very obsessed with. And then like over the years, like obviously like I think my style has changed, but also too has kind of remained the same, if that makes any sense. And honestly, just putting pieces out that I know that I am going to wear, right? I guess like if you want to talk about like advice too, like I'm building a brand for me, right? I'm not building a brand for people and like, what they may want, right? I always joke around that I probably won't ever make a polo because I don't like wearing polos. There are times, yes, where I'm going to have to be required to wear a collar. But for the most part, I like wearing t-shirts. I like wearing long sleeve t-shirts. I like wearing hoodies and all this and that. And so it's like, I think for me, it's just, as long as I'm keeping that element of like, I'm building for myself because this is what I want to wear. And if people want to follow along and they resonate with that, then it's like, yeah, cool. Then I'm doing my job.
Could you share a moment when your unique perspective of golf and fashion was unlocked? Maybe an opportunity that you were able to uncover that other brands typically wouldn't because of the focus you have and the niche of combining golf and fashion and Filipino heritage. Is there that moment where when you reflect, you realize it was either a learning moment or some sort of opportunity that was unlocked, or someone that you wanted to engage with stood up, took notice, and started a conversation with you? Give us one of those times.
Yeah. Man, such a good question. I guess I'll start off by like, never met this person. I hope one day I do, but I'll go back to Tiger Woods. You look at him and how he dressed on the course compared to everybody else. It was very baggy. It was very loose, and I freaking loved it. Right? Because to me, like that's the type of style that I wanted to wear. And so to see him be able to do that, even if it was a polo, right, and even if like the pant size seemed a little bit too baggy and too big, I was like, no, he's pulling it off, right? And again, like that allowed me to feel comfortable and putting my own type of style together at a young age. I think other elements where it's like, where I started to find that, hey, like there is something here. And this was way before I was even thinking about doing the brand. From a shoe perspective, I started noticing that brands like Nike and Jordan started to push stuff out by putting cleats on their shoes that typically that I would wear, outside of the course. And I was like, wait, there's a movement here. There's definitely a shift. Why would those two brands who are very well known into, both the golf space, but also too the sneaker world, like, why are they making Jordan 1s or Jordan 3s for the golf course? Why are they making Nike Dunks for the golf course? And I loved it. Right. And again, like I think they were trying to reach a very niche target. And I'll raise my hand. I was one of them. Right.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm a golfer, but I'm also a big sneakerhead, and I know what you're doing, and the strategy, it's working. Right. It's working on the consumer like me. So that was another shift that I started to notice where it's like, okay, cool. Like I think this is here to stay. And now you fast forward, right? I guess like another moment, and it was one of the first products that I launched was redesigning what a mock neck could look like. For me, growing up, playing golf, I always loved wearing a mock neck just because Tiger did, right? But I wanted to redesign it in a way that felt a little bit more comfortable. It felt like it wasn't choking you in the neck. It was a little bit more free flowing. And again, I took a lot of elements and inspiration from old Tiger looks to then, also modernizing it as well in terms of like the fit and the style. And for me, that was again, just a shift in, hey, like I'm trying to solve my own problem. I don't think it's everybody's problem, but I definitely knew that I needed a better mock neck. And you fast forward to today, I've received so many just humbling and wonderful comments around like I've been looking for a mock neck like this too. And it's like, oh, great. That's amazing. So again, that's why I said like I'm building a brand for myself, but like also too, if people relate to it, and it's like, that's a win, right? So to be able to kind of relate with people in that sense too, it's just like, okay, cool. I do have something here, and it's sticking. So yeah, Bob, I hope that answers your question.
It did. Yeah.
I have a question. I think I feel like we're missing a big piece of this puzzle, right? Which is the how, right? So you had this idea to, create a new clothing line. Was that something you were passionate about before? Did you go to school for that? How did you learn how to make your own line?
That's a great question. I don't even know to this day. I did not go to school for fashion design. I think for me, I've just always been obsessed as a consumer with good product, right? You take a look at brands like Supreme, Kith from Ronnie Feig, the Nikes of the world, so many other brands that I'm blanking out on. All of them have one thing that they're very good at, and it's storytelling through their product. And when you have a good story to tell, when you use premium goods, it's going to be a win to the consumer that you're trying to reach, right? All those brands that I named, right? They all have their different niches and different outlets. And for me, I've always been obsessed with that, both from whether it was like a simple t-shirt or a hoodie, or a specific sneaker that told a story that I resonated with. And so I guess it was like a self-taught thing, or just, again, my obsessiveness with it is just like, cool. Like, I think I should be able to be able to do that. Right. But again, like, it took me a long way to get there. In college, I also interned for one of my friends who also launched a US made clothing line called Concord Button Downs. It was very New England. It was very just Bostonian, etc., this and that, very preppy. And at time, right? Like I went through that phase, and I wanted to learn more about how he was launching his business, and being US made, that's a whole different beast to tackle, right? Because most brands, they like to outsource because it's a lot cheaper. When you're doing something made in the US, like, you're looking at higher pricing, because of the fabrics that are being used, like, it's just higher quality. So when I interned for Concord Button Downs, I got to learn that process. I got to learn it from just understanding, like, this is what it takes to, sample, to actually get it into production, to figuring out which fabrics are going to work, which prints you can do on a specific fabric. Like, there was just so many different things. And that was an awesome experience, right? Mm. Especially in college. And then I graduate, and I don't even touch fashion at all. I get into the world of pharma, and honestly, that's still my career to this day. But in the back of my head, I've always been obsessed with, how do you get to that point of being able to build your product, build your brand, et cetera, this and that. And now that I'm doing it, I'm still learning, right? I think the disadvantage that I have is, like, I never went to school, so I never got to fully experience what it truly means to build something from scratch, outsourcing different, fabrics and materials. Yeah, there's so much that I'm still learning, right? Especially with some of the first products that I've made. And also too, it's like a split. Half of it is made in the US because again, from my experience, I wanted to do that, but I knew how much it would cost. And then also to the other half is like, I know I need to outsource this. Outsourcing it's a completely different ball game because, you're talking with a completely different country operating on a different time zone. And so, you have to adjust to that. And then you have to get used to just being like, okay, hey, I'm such a small player in this space, so I have to be patient with, the communications back and forth. And I also too, I have to be patient with myself because I'm just learning, right? I'm learning how to build a tech pack on my own. I'm learning how to source the right materials because I'm going through constant, like, just reviews of, like, no, this feels right. Actually, no, this doesn't feel right, etc. Yeah, there's so much within that process.
What advice do you have for young professionals, especially from diverse backgrounds, that have an idea and maybe want to launch their own business? What are, if you had to write the fact sheet or the cheat sheet on launching your own business, what might be in the top 5 or 10 items that they absolutely, without question, should consider, during and after launch?
Yeah. I guess I'll take Nike's slogan, just do it. Literally do it. I think though it's not necessarily a regret, but I really wish I did this sooner. But also too, I'm a big believer in timing, and this was the time for me to be able to do it. But if I had the opportunity to really take a risk and a chance on myself, I would have done it so much sooner. That's my advice, right? And I think a lot of entrepreneurs, people that have started businesses, will say the same thing. They wish they started at a different age or a different time, right? It is so worth it when you go for it. There is nothing more rewarding when you're working for yourself and you're learning along the way. I think, yeah, part of that process is like you really have to be patient. Nothing is going to come easy. Nothing is just going to be like handed to you. Like you truly have to work for it. But yeah, there's really nothing more rewarding than taking a chance on yourself. And again, it took me years to actually get to that place of comfortability. I felt beforehand, I just felt so trapped in my own thoughts. Not that we have to talk about it, but mental health has always been such a struggle for me. Dealing with anxiety, dealing with depression, dealing with thoughts of, what, I don't want to be in this world anymore. Trying to navigate that. And then also too, trying to tell yourself like, no, you can do it. You can keep going. I think there's a lot of people that have suffered through that type of journey. Like I'm not perfect. I still go through it to this day. But yeah, like what keeps me going is like, no, I'm building something bigger than I ever could have imagined. And I think, it's easier said than done. Obviously, again, we talked about it earlier with, investing money, time, that takes a lot. And that is probably like the first hump that like any entrepreneur that wants to get into anything, like you got to go over it. You got to go through it, because I think a lot of people will be stopped, when it comes to the financial aspect. And there are ways of doing it, right? You can either save up like what my wife and I did and, kind of do it that way, or you can find investors. You can find, places that might loan it to you. I think I took it the hard way of just like, or stubborn way, if you want to call it. I'm like, no, I want to do this by myself.
Right.
I want to, yeah, bootstrap it. Like literally just be like, no, I want to say like I did this, on my own. And look, if it ends up failing, at least you can say to yourself like, hey, you did it. Right. Bob, we talked about it earlier too. It's like, after the third year or whatever, 50% of businesses pretty much fall off because of a lot of reasons. They either couldn't afford it or they just lost steam. Right. They made bad investments. Yeah. I think, yeah, it's a lot of advice, but, ultimately I just say, go for it. Do it. It's so worth it.
And thanks for that. And thanks for your transparency around navigating mental health, a topic that a lot of us have covered for many years, either with family members or our own demons. What are some of the things that you are doing on a regular basis, or what habits are you building in to your day-to-day world to navigate your career, PARE, and ensuring that you're fueling solid, healthy mental health habits? What are some of the things that you're doing to stay healthy?
Yeah. Great question. I think outside of like my mental health, I've also experienced a lot of just health issues and problems. So once I figured out a way to truly prioritize and like do something that's like, hey, like this is going to prolong my life, and keep me healthy. There's no rubric on it. Like it's just like you either do it or you don't. Right. And yeah, I think prioritizing literally your physical health first is like just super important. Yeah, whether that's like, again, taking a run, going to the gym, whatever, getting outside, right? Luckily, playing golf, I'm outside, so that
4 hours right
helps me.
there.
Yeah, I don't know if golf is good mental health exercise for me.
No, and sometimes it could either be great or it can be your absolute downfall, right? You can experience both, and it's just it's so complicated. But then that's why you love the game, right?
Yeah.
I think just like other things too, to just keep my mental sanity is not to get into religion at all, but my faith is very important, and so I try to just stay rooted in God's word, and I just try to stick to that as much as possible. Right. For me, that's always important. And that always comes first. I always try to spend time in prayer, whether it's about others, whether it's something that I need in particular. But, I think for the most part, being able to have just those private conversations truly helps me, especially in very hard times. Right. I've seen a lot of miracles just by being able to do that. Yeah. And ultimately, too, keeping good company. Right. There have been a lot of shifts in my life where I've had to, whether it was by choice or whether it was just by circumstance, that people in my life are no longer a part of my life. I think being able to keep really good company, really good friends and family that will ground you, keep you accountable, that will want to see you succeed and root for you, while also too at the same time give you the hard advice and give you some sort of clarity that you never thought you needed. I think being able to have that is also very important. I think this, life is not meant to be done alone. And I think I've spent many years feeling and thinking that I was alone when, the reality was like, no, I actually had community, right? I had people that supported me. So yeah, I think there's so many other things, but I'd say like those things are pretty top of mind. And then also too, golf, right? There are days where like it truly shatters my mental health, but there are most days it really helps a ton. You learn so much about yourself. You learn so much about just being outside with nature. There's so much depth in what golf can do for your mental health, your sanity. It's such a unique sport and game that does that. I really don't think there's any other sport that can really, you can say like it contributes to your mental health. So yeah.
Matt, I think that you are a metaphor for golf in so many ways in how you talk about yourself and your business. I think it's an incredible feat that you started a business and you're continuing. You got your 2-year anniversary, you're moving forward and you're doing this with a career and you're managing a lot in your life. And I think that a lot of people would have stopped already. And so that is a win. So big kudos to you for just keep going and keep moving forward. I just have to call that out because there are so many barriers that you talked about that could have stopped you. And you just rose above them. I'm not saying it was smooth, right? But you did it anyway. And I think that's the discipline and the self-determination that you have that is indicative of the game as well. It's kind of why I don't play it, because the discipline part is really hard for me. But I want to. I got family members who are obsessed with it as well. But that drive, pun intended, right, is really important and it's kept you going. And I feel like out of all the things that you've said today, it really kind of lands on those points. You talked about, being comfortable with yourself. You talked about being patient with yourself, right? But you also talked about, just do it, right? And I'll just be corny and just say, you're just taking that swing, and I think I just kind of like how you framed all of this today. So thank you for that.
Yeah. It's hard to do a wrap up without pulling in a string of puns, right?
I love it. There are times where I'm like, don't say that because it's
Yeah,
just gonna
yeah,
be a
right,
fun.
right, right.
No, Karen, I appreciate that. I think, one of the things why I wanted to just hop on the pod with you guys is like, we need to talk about that stuff because I never ever want this to ever be something where it's like self glory or it's like, oh no, I did this, like, whatever. But it's like, no, it's like more like, hey, I'm a regular human being like anybody else. And we're just here just trying to make it by any means. Right. And yeah, honestly, like I just hope that people just take that encouragement where it's like, no, you're able to do it. You just got to find a way to do it. Whether it's battling with yourself in your head, whether it's overcoming certain people that might block you from accomplishing that. Again, you said it. There's multiple barriers. It's never a smooth journey. I think that's also another thing that like we need to tell people is just like it's not easy. It's like it's the hardest thing ever, but it's also the most satisfying thing in the world too.
And something you mentioned that truly resonated with me, Matt, is your advice about keeping good company. It's just critical, not only to being grounded, but long-term success as well. And someone once told me when I started to make decisions of where I spend my time a few years ago and stop spending some time with some acquaintances and friends, it was, did they fill my bucket, or whenever I met with them, were they pulling from my bucket, right? Were they, and it should be a two-way street. Sometimes you get together and they fill your bucket and you fill their bucket. But if it's always feel like you're giving and not receiving, I'm not sure that's a relationship that should be part of the ecosystem that we all live in, right? And so thank you.
Yeah, those are hard realities, right? And that's why I mentioned it is because some of those relationships that I had to let go of were really tough. They're still tough to this day.
Yeah, sure.
Right? Because you knew what it was, you know what it possibly can be, right? But I also look at it as like, you know what, maybe it's not permanent. Maybe it's just a break from, something that was once toxic, something that was not filling your bucket. And you felt like you were the one you kept pouring and pouring and pouring. But, I think my hope in all of that too is like, I do hope that I stumble across them again in some degree where it's like, hey, we can continue to do life together. But also too, what's been very humbling and fruitful is that like I've met, not saying that the people that I've met have replaced them, but it's really cool to meet folks that I've made a connection with where they're starting to pour into my bucket that I never thought they would. And again, it's a part of life, but at the same time too, it's so important. You need to keep good company in order to keep you away from, bogging you down, right? Because like the more negative you kind of like more negativity you bring in, it's like, yeah, of course you're gonna be in a negative space.
That's right. That's right.
But the more that you bring in people that are just full of love and all about peace and all about, hey, like we're all about just serving each other. That's the winning model.
Right on. Right on. So how about we wrap up today's discussion with some rapid fire questions? Is that good? All right.
Sounds good.
Just keep it crisp. Unless there's a good story, then feel free to dive in and tell us anything that you're comfortable with. But all right. So first one, what was your favorite subject in high school?
English.
Why?
People won't know this, but like I used to love reading books. I haven't had time to read many books as of late, but yeah, English was a way to understand different perspectives, right? From different authors. So
that's great. How about your least favorite subject in high school?
Math.
We hear that a lot.
Yeah. But also too, you have to be good at math in the business that I am in.
It's critical, right? Yeah, it's critical.
Anything that involves like a calculator, I'm like, nah, this is not good.
Yeah, math's critical. Math's critical as an entrepreneur. What's the best advice you've ever received?
That's so tough. If there's one person And man, oh man, no, I'm going back and forth now because there's two people. Can I give two people? Is that
Sure.
okay?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. The first
Your
person,
episode. It's your episode, Matt. Yeah, give us two people.
the first person, he was my old youth pastor and mentor. His name was Matt DeLorenzo, and his very simple advice was always to love others, no matter what. You know, people can hurt you, people can be on different paths, but as long as you are showing love to people, that's the only way to go about in life, right? And I've held on to that. You know, it's a hard thing to do, especially when you feel like you've been wrong, and also too, it's a hard thing to do, especially when there's a lot of different perspectives, separate views on how to do life, or which party you abide to, etc. But yeah, I think love has always carried me on. And then the second person was my mother-in-law. Right before she passed, she always told me to believe in myself and go for it. Unfortunately, she wasn't able to see me and my wife be able to do the business, but she always hoped that would be the case. And I owe her a lot for taking that chance of like, no, we're doing this, right? She's always said, like, I believe you can do it. You just got to believe in yourself to do it. And I know a lot of that sounds, for both things, they sound very cliche, and you hear it all over the place, but I will always take those things with me, regardless how anything pans out.
A wrap-up question here, Matt. What's your why? Why do you do what you do?
Another great question. And also tough. My why is I'm here to just be a servant. I think that's like my purpose in life, is to really serve others. And I've found multiple ways of doing that, whether that's my 9 to 5, whether that's through PARE, whether that's through just simple conversations with friends or family. Yeah, I think my why here is to just be the best servant that I can. I can never do anything through self-ambition or, to me, I try to keep myself humble to, again, like not gain anything from it, but more so like, no, like just keep pouring out into people's lives and into the world. And yeah, I just know, like, a lot of that stuff too is like, it will come back, right? But I can't expect it, right?
Right. Well, Matt, thanks so much for your investment today, supporting our MVP community. Best of luck with PARE. I think for those who want to learn more and how you've incorporated the purple yam into clothing as well, right? Pare.golf is where you need to visit, which is fantastic. And love that video, by the way, that's on there. Thanks so much, Matt. It was great to meet you and learn and get to connect today.
It definitely was.
Thank you, Karen.
One more question.
Yeah.
Are we pares now?
We're you guys are my pares for life, right? We are moving forward.
Pares for life.
Yeah, that's what it's about, right? Pares
that
for
might
life.
be a bumper sticker, Matt. Pares for life.
I might have to make it a bumper sticker, but no, Karen and Bob, thank you so much. Seriously, had a blast talking with you both, and yeah, you guys are doing such great work. I think this is a platform that's much needed, and if there's one thing that I have to say is, like, I hope this and MVP continues to be on, right? I think, especially in today's climate, it's so needed. People don't know it, but I hope people see why this type of thing exists. So thank you.
Right on.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
Appreciate it.